I know that as a scientist, you were specifically interested in, focusing on releasing your data openly, and you're also a big supporter of open and fair science. So can you just tell, many of our students are undergraduates, they haven't gone to their MA or like advanced graduate studies yet, but I do want them I want them to have the opportunity to be exposed to these concepts. So whatever you can tell them about that would be great.
Yeah, is something I uploaded earlier today. There is a nice book on the matter. So it's called The Open Revolution, Rewriting the Rules of the Information Age. It's an interesting book about openness, and there are lots of books about this, but this one is actually openly licensed so that we can use it on Wikipedia. And that's one thing. Then you have things, if you go to English open research, for instance, then there's a nice video that I made like in 2011. It has been in this Wikipedia page for a while. This explains the nature of open science. The basic idea is, as a researcher in essentially any field, open science or open research means that once you record some aspect of your research for yourself, and there's no good reason to keep it for yourself, then you should share it with the world. There are some intermediate or some more, let's say, more granular things to consider about this, but most aspects of research are digital already. And once they're digital, then you can bring them online very quickly. And once they're online, they can be shared with the entire world very quickly. And essentially, open science wants to make this the default. This does not mean that everything has to be shared. No, there are certain things like patient data or so that shouldn't be shared under normal conditions. But the default for most research data should be that it is being shared, and not just data, all the things that are elements of a research cycle. All these things, they should be shared openly, and more people are doing this. So this page gives you an intro to that. And then in order to give you some more detail, here's a journal that I am editing as a journal editor. And that publishes elements of the entire research cycle. So let's just have a look at the most recent articles here, where you see topics or things that you might not see elsewhere very much. So here we have a workshop report. Well, these are usually enough, but here, grant proposal, another grant proposal, a method, workshop report, yet another grant proposal, research idea. That's the kind of things that are really hard to publish in like normal context, and also many people, they would really hesitate to publish their grant proposals because the current line of academic incentives is against that. But more and more people understand that it is better for humanity, it's better for research if you share your idea, even your grant proposal that was rejected, or your grant proposal once you're starting the project, because that helps to involve the community. If you think that your research actually addresses a problem that is of relevance to anyone else, then why not tell the others that you're working on this? So you might actually get collaborators, you might get crowdsourcing, you might get pointers, you might get someone who actually reads over your lab notes from today and then maybe points out, look, here is something you actually made a mistake, or you tried it this way, but I've tried it that way, and that actually worked better. Or these kinds of things that you just don't have in a closed system, or you have them with 3, 4, 5 years delay when the final papers are out from those projects that just got funded, things like that. Mm-hmm. And so you see here, people are also sharing other aspects of this. So data management plans, for instance, that's a thing that is more and more required. And very few people make them public, but here is just one example. So there are other places where people share those things, but this journal has the focus on open science. So whereas many other journals, they will have some open science thing here and there, but this journal essentially only publishes open science. And so I think that's worth a look.
Well, Daniel,
Yeah,
you're preaching to the choir. You're preaching to the choir when it comes to me. But what would you tell all the people who would tell you, "But why would I publish it? This is competition, and if I share what I'm doing, someone might beat me to it, or I might lose my, my promotion at my university, etc., etc."
yeah, well, I have those conversations on a very regular basis. So there are different things you can say to them, and they actually differ as a function of their situation and the specific objections that they have. So let me respond by taking a more general, let's say, approach to tackling this issue. And for this, I would like to actually choose the current COVID-19 crisis. So you may have noticed that lots of research is being shared at a speed that is unusual. And this means that the researchers are aware of mechanisms that allow to share. And they share not just papers via preprints, for instance, they also share code, they share data, they share methods, they share even like material samples. So if we can do this for this emergency, then this means we can technically also do it in, let's say, peace times. And the problem here is then that in peace times, let's say the incentives are different. Here, people are dying every day. And so it's very hard for a scientist to say, well, so suppose you are a researcher who has made some sort of a breakthrough that could actually help the patients like avoid getting so sick that they need a ventilator or something like this, right? And so you have made some sort of a breakthrough that actually has an impact on this disease or this outbreak. Then how would you justify going through the usual publication channels, which might take months or even years until you actually finally get your paper out? And in the meantime, there are people like dying by the thousands every day. You can't justify that. And so that's why for this current crisis, people don't do this. They're still publishing in journals, but they put out the preprint, they put out the data, they put out the software essentially as soon as they can. Still not entirely as soon as they can, but much more quickly than in other circumstances. And through this, I actually think that more and more people also in fields that are not directly related to, let's say, virology or epidemiology or these kind of things, they will take note and they will think about, oh, well, what about me sharing my research about some excavations in the desert, about like ancient civilizations? Why not sharing this with a preprint? That's the kind of conversation that this epidemic can also trigger. And the more examples we have for how it looks like, the more rational this discussion also gets. People actually like to critique something once it's out there. The more examples they have of openly shared workflows is better. So a good example here is this Johns Hopkins daily dashboard for COVID-19, which has been in essentially every news channel. But what they did is just basically scan the web for places where information about COVID cases is available, then transform that data, which often is originally published in PDFs or on HTML pages or things like that, transform that into a consistent data format that then works across the globe. And then they expose this in a way that everyone across the globe can access. And then essentially everybody across the globe is accessing it because that is a very good source of information on the topic. And then my son just entered the room, so I lost track a little bit. Yeah, so Yeah, they share their data. They also, to some extent, share the code. Lots of people have actually built on top of that visualization for visualizing other aspects. Lots of papers have used that data. And just imagine they would have shared their data the usual way. Let's say in still many papers you find the phrase data available upon request or something like this. For this ongoing crisis, you would have imagined lots and lots of requests, and then the authors might actually just need to hire some people to actually just deal with those requests. But it was a simpler solution to just put up a website where they share the data that they had, and then people could inform themselves. The original authors of that website, they could then go about doing their research rather than dealing with all those requests. Things like that. And so lots of people are in this crisis, the capabilities of research being performed in the open and quickly. Oh yeah, also another aspect, one of the first papers about the SARS-CoV-2 virus was actually one that hypothesized that some snakes could have been the intermediate hosts. So we know that most likely hosts of the long-term hosts of those viruses are bats, but it's not clear how they actually ended up in humans, whether that was directly from the bats to us or via some intermediate. And by now we think there might be pangolins or some other species, but the first paper was actually about 2 snake species. But this was shared as a preprint, and essentially the next day, a number of people who know enough about viral transmission from bats to humans and who know something about these kinds of snakes, they came together, or they independently posted criticism of that paper, and a few days later it was withdrawn. In the classical research scheme, it would have still been in the pipeline, might have come out 3, 4, 5 months later, and when it's completely irrelevant. But this was kind of the first real paper on the topic. And so lots of people paid attention to it, and it was quickly corrected. And we still learn something about the biology of the snakes and the virus and the bats in the process, right? All of this really, there are new papers every day, and they're getting criticized, they're getting cited just a few days later in the next preprint, or the data gets incorporated in places like Wikidata or other data models. It's really happening at a speed. And then when you consider that this speed is possible for this kind of research, then the question is, why shouldn't it be possible for other kinds of research? Let's say text mining of ancient Egypt, like inscripts or whatever, or choose your topic, right? So I think in a way, this crisis is a big demo of open science. That's not why it was made. But that's one way we can pull some positive out of that.
Mm-hmm.